I always thought I had a perfect life. I was a political consultant, recently elected to my first term in Congress, and everything seemed to be on the upswing. I had a great job, a loving wife, her name is Jessica, and a house that was starting to feel like home. Jessica and I had been married for 6 years, and we had built a solid relationship. At least that's what I thought. As the campaign season heated up, I poured everything into my work. I spent long nights strategizing, meeting with constituents, and sharing my vision for a better community. Jessica was supportive, or so I believed. She would often tell me she was proud of me, which made those late nights feel a little less lonely. But in hindsight, I noticed some things that I brushed off as stress or busy schedules. She became increasingly distant, often cycling through moods that were tough to understand. When I'd come home late, she'd sometimes be in a bad mood, snapping at me over trivial things. I'd argue with myself, thinking it was just the pressure of my campaign. The night I won the election, the celebration was electric. Friends, family, and supporters were all around, and I felt on top of the world. I was finally going to make a difference. Later that night, after the crowd had thinned and the celebration transitioned to a more intimate gathering at our home, I noticed Jessica acting strangely. She kept stepping away to take calls and texting frantically. I brushed it off as her needing to catch up with friends or manage the aftermath of the night's events. In retrospect, I wish I had paid closer attention. A few days later, everything changed. I had been too busy basking in the afterglow of the election win to notice that Jessica was acting even more aloof. Then it happened. I was in my home office, going through some emails when I noticed a message notification pop up on her laptop. It was a message from a name I didn't recognize, Kyle, a staff member from my campaign office. As I read it, my heart dropped. The messages were flirty and suggestive, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My hands shook as I clicked through the messages, and the reality settled in like a dark cloud. It was clear. They were having an affair. I confronted her that night when she got home. There was no way I could keep this to myself. I was angry, devastated, and confused. When I asked her about it, her reaction was shockingly calm at first. She even laughed, saying I was being paranoid. I pressed her, demanding the truth, and that's when she started to unravel. She finally admitted to the affair after I pushed her with the evidence. Her excuses were weak. She claimed it was just a fling, a mistake, and that she felt neglected while I chased my dreams. Hearing her defend herself felt like a slap in the face. It was infuriating. I couldn't understand how she could so easily brush aside the years we'd built together. Jessica kept telling me it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything. Her indifference to the pain she'd caused dug a hole in my chest. I thought our love was stronger than this betrayal, but she made it clear it was a fleeting moment of pleasure for her. It made me question everything about our marriage. In that moment of confrontation, I could feel my world shattering around me. It was a cocktail of anger, sadness, and disbelief. We had shared so much, our dreams, our fears, our lives, only to find out it was built on a fragile foundation. I didn't know how to process it all. The betrayal cut deep and the trust was gone. I had always believed in loyalty and partnership, but now those ideals felt like a cruel joke. As I sat on the couch that night, the weight of it all crashed over me. I felt the tears coming on, but I held them back. I knew I had to get through this with some semblance of dignity. I didn't want to let her see how much she had hurt me. I was a congressman now. I had constituents who looked up to me. Public service was supposed to be about integrity, and here I was, reeling from a personal betrayal that threatened to define me. I had to decide what to do next. Would I fight for our marriage, or was this the end? I was overwhelmed by a sense of loss and betrayal, but I also felt a flicker of determination. I wanted to serve my constituents with integrity, and somehow this twisted situation was going to shape my path forward. But how? I had to figure that out. The days after that confrontation were hell. I found myself navigating a minefield of emotions. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, often spilling over in unexpected moments. One minute I'd be answering calls from constituents about pressing issues in the district, and the next I'd be staring at Jessica across the kitchen table, feeling like she was a stranger. It was surreal. I felt as if my life had turned into a bad soap opera, and I was the unwilling star. Jessica tried to act normal. She offered me coffee in the morning with a smile that felt forced, as if we could just pretend everything was fine. But it was. Each attempt she made at normalcy felt like a fresh wound reopening. I could see the guilt gnawing away at her, but her inability to take full responsibility only infuriated me more. She'd throw in half-hearted apologies in casual conversations, as if it could erase the damage. "I'm sorry you found out the way you did," she would say, yet it felt more like a dismissal of my pain than a true acknowledgement of her betrayal. Meanwhile, I buried myself in work. I thought if I focused on my duties, I could at least pretend that my personal life wasn't crumbling. I attended town hall meetings, gave speeches, and met with various committees. I wanted to project strength to my constituents, to show them that I was still the leader they had elected. But inside, I was unraveling. The longer I tried to keep up appearances, the more suffocated I felt. I was a congressman, a public figure, and yet I felt so terribly alone. One evening, I returned home later than usual after a particularly draining day. Jessica was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I could tell she was waiting for me, and it made my heart race with a mix of irritation and foreboding. I didn't want to engage, but there she was, trying to lure me into conversation. "You should come sit with me," she said, her tone softer than usual. I hated how her voice had the power to evoke any kind of feeling in me amidst all the turmoil. "No, I think I'll just get some dinner," I replied curtly, stepping into the kitchen. I could feel her gaze on my back, but I refused to turn around. My appetite had vanished, but I needed to do something, anything, to distract myself from the reality of our situation. As I rummaged through the fridge, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Kyle, the staffer. My stomach twisted at the thought of him. Why was he still reaching out? Did he think he could just waltz back into our lives after everything? I opened the message, half expecting to see something vile. Instead, it was innocuous, just a reminder about a meeting, but the fact that his name was still in my life felt unbearable. I snapped. "You know, maybe you should let Kyle know that he can stop texting me. I don't need to be reminded that he's a part of this mess." I shouted, the frustration spilling out of me as I turned to face her. Jessica's face paled, and I could see the surprise in her eyes. I had been trying to contain my feelings, but this was it. This had gone too far. "Stop it," she yelled back, her voice rising. "This isn't just about him. You don't get to control who I talk to." It was a shocking response, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about her shame or guilt. She was defensive, even combative. "Right," I shot back, feeling the heat of anger flare within me. "Because you have so much to say about control after what you've done." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I instantly regretted the escalation. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica crossed her arms, her lips pursed. "You're making this too hard." "I made a mistake, okay? It was a stupid fling. You're acting like I ruined our whole lives." Her insistence that this was just a stupid fling was infuriating. How could she minimize the damage? I had given up so much for our marriage, and all she could offer was this flimsy excuse. My mind raced. I wanted to scream, to fight, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me, but I held back. I realized I couldn't keep doing this back and forth, this emotional battery. I took a step back, trying to recalibrate. "No," I finally said, my voice low but steady. "You made a choice, Jessica. This was not just a mistake. It was a betrayal. We need to be honest about what this means for us." Her expression shifted, and I could see the emotions flickering behind her eyes: fear, anger, perhaps a hint of regret. "You're right, but I don't want to lose you," she whispered. And there it was, the heart of the matter. My heart ached at her desperation, but I couldn't ignore the reality of her betrayal. I wanted to believe her words, yet I also felt that I had to find clarity on what I wanted moving forward. I was caught between love and the need to protect myself from further hurt. That night, I went to bed feeling more lost than ever. I realized that I had to make a decision soon. Could I forgive her? Did I truly want to salvage our marriage, or was it wiser to cut my losses and start anew? The emotional pain was palpable, and as I drifted off to sleep, I knew I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it would be. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and emotional turmoil. I found myself oscillating between wanting to confront the situation head-on and wishing I could just pretend it didn't exist. I buried myself in work during the day, attending meetings and engaging with my constituents. I couldn't afford to let them see the cracks in my facade. However, when I returned home each night, the tension was palpable. It felt like I was walking on eggshells, and I hated it. Jessica tried to reach out, attempting to engage in normal conversations, asking about my day or suggesting we watch a movie together. But every time she spoke, I was reminded of the betrayal. Her attempts felt hollow, almost like she was trying to act her way back into my good graces. I kept my responses short, struggling to mask my anger and sadness. I didn't want to dismiss her completely, but I also knew I needed space to think. One evening, after a particularly long day, I returned home to find Jessica waiting at the dining room table, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses set out. She looked hopeful, almost eager. "I thought we could talk," she said, her tone tentative. I glanced at the wine, then back at her. "What is there to talk about, Jess? You've made your choices." She flinched at my words, but I pressed on. "What more do you want from me? You've already broken the trust. Do you think a nice dinner and some wine will fix that?" "No, but I want to explain myself," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I've been thinking about everything I did. I know I messed up, but it was just a moment of weakness. I wanted to feel wanted again, and everything happened so fast." Her excuses felt rehearsed, and I struggled not to roll my eyes. "So your solution was to sleep with my staffer?" The sarcasm in my voice was bitter. "What kind of explanation is that?" "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a stupid mistake, and I regret it every day. Can't you see that?" she pleaded, her eyes welling up with tears. "Regret doesn't undo what you did, Jessica. You chose to cross that line. You chose him over me and our vows." The anger bubbled again, and I felt the heat rise in my chest. "You didn't even consider how it would impact us." I know," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to fix this. I love you. What do you want me to say?" I snapped, realizing I was losing control. "Should I just forgive you because you say you love me? How do I know this is genuine? Maybe you'll just go back to hiding behind someone else as soon as the pressure is off." Jessica reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine in a desperate attempt to connect. "No, I don't want to hide anymore. I want to face this together. I want to earn your trust back." At that moment, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: anger, sadness, a flicker of hope. The truth was, I loved her. I wanted to believe that she could change, that our marriage meant something to her. But the betrayal felt like a festering wound that refused to heal. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've shattered everything we built." There was a long, heavy silence between us. The weight of the moment loomed thick. The air punctuated by the ticking clock in the background. Jessica's face crumpled and the tears began to fall freely. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just felt so lost, and I made a terrible choice." I leaned back in my chair, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "You keep saying you want to fix this, but what does that even mean? Do you really want to put in the work? Or do you just want me to forgive you so we can go back to pretending?" "I want to put in the work," she insisted, her eyes pleading with sincerity. "I want to show you that I can be better, that I can be the wife you deserve." The tension in the room felt suffocating. I had so many questions, so much uncertainty swirling in my mind. Could I really allow myself to be vulnerable again? The thought terrified me. I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "What does that look like?" I asked, my tone softening just slightly. "If we are going to move forward, we need to be honest about what this will take. I can't just sweep this under the rug." Jessica nodded, her expression serious now. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to counseling if that's what it takes. I'll talk to you about everything. I won't hide anymore, I promise." Her words did give me a sliver of hope, but I still couldn't shake the fear of being hurt again. Trust doesn't come easy, especially after an experience like this. I needed time to think, to process everything. "I need some space," I said finally. "I need to figure out what I want too." The look on her face was a mix of disappointment and understanding. "I get it. Just know that I'm here and I won't give up. I'll prove my commitment to you." I nodded, but deep down I was terrified. I was standing at a crossroads and the path ahead was murky. I had to consider my next steps carefully. The idea of fighting for my marriage was daunting, but walking away felt just as painful. I knew I had to decide soon. I just hoped that whatever choice I made would lead me toward healing, whether it was together or apart. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what the future would hold. The only thing I knew for sure was that this journey of healing wouldn't be easy, and I would need every ounce of strength to navigate the turmoil ahead. The next few weeks felt like an emotional roller coaster. I had decided to give Jessica a chance, but every day brought its own set of challenges. We began attending couples therapy, and while it felt like a step in the right direction, it also opened up a floodgate of emotions that I wasn't quite prepared for. During our sessions, we explored everything, from the cracks in our communication to the deeper issues that led to her affair. Jessica would often cry, expressing regret and pain. I could see she was truly trying, yet every tear reminded me of the betrayal. It was hard to reconcile the woman I had loved with the one who had hurt me so deeply. One particular session, the therapist asked us to talk about our feelings in the wake of everything that had happened. I remember sitting there, feeling exposed under her gaze. I feel shattered, I finally admitted, my voice shaky. I've lost the person I thought I knew. I can't trust you right now, and I don't know how to rebuild that. Jessica reached for my hand. I know it's hard for you to see me as someone who can change, but I promise I'm putting in the effort. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be the wife you can depend on. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Kyle, and it hurt like hell. You say these things, but how do I know it'll last? What if this is just a phase and you end up falling into old habits? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's the risk we take, she replied, her eyes sincere. But I'm ready to fight for us. I want to prove that I can be better. I've started to change my habits, even in small ways. I'm looking for a new job. I want to remove any temptation. Hearing her speak about removing temptations made me realize how deeply the affair had affected her as well. She was acknowledging the need for accountability, and that was something I hadn't expected. I could see the determination in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. We started going through the motions of trying to reconnect. We'd share meals together, watch movies, and even go for walks in the park. But even in those moments, there was an unshakable tension between us. It felt like I was with a stranger, a woman who had loved me but had also chosen betrayal. One night after a particularly draining day, I found myself sitting on the porch staring into the night sky. Jessica joined me, and for a moment we sat in silence. Finally, she broke the stillness. I can't help but feel like I've lost you, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. You're here, but you're so distant. My heart sank. I'm trying, Jessica. But every time I think I'm making progress, I'm reminded of the pain. It's not easy to just flip a switch and pretend everything is fine. I know, and I'm sorry for the hurt I caused, she lied, her voice thick with emotion. I wish I could take it back. I would do anything to change what I did. Words don't change the reality, Jess, I said, a bitter edge creeping into my tone. I want to move forward, but I need to see action. You say you're changing, but I need to know you're serious about it. We sat in silence again, and I could see Jessica grappling with the weight of my words. It was clear she was making an effort, but I couldn't shake the doubt that lingered just beneath the surface. As the weeks progressed, the sessions became more intense. Each time we opened up, the therapist would guide us through uncomfortable conversations. We tackled the uncomfortable truths about our relationship, how I sometimes became absorbed in my work, and how Jessica felt neglected. I realized that while her choice to cheat was her own, there had been cracks in our relationship long before that moment. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Friday night, and Jessica had gone out with a friend. I was home alone, trying to decompress after a long week. I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a message from Kyle. I hesitated before opening it, my heart racing. The message was simple but chilling. You should know that I'm still interested in Jessica. She hasn't moved on from me. The anger surged through my veins like fire. How dare he reach out to me after everything? The betrayal I thought I was managing resurfaced in full force. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but my hands were shaking. I was tempted to respond, to lash out at him, but a wave of clarity washed over me. I didn't want to engage with him. Instead, I needed to confront Jessica. I quickly deleted the message and waited for her to come home. When she stepped through the door, I could feel the tension crackling in the air. "Hey," she said, her face lighting up momentarily. "I had a great time tonight. Did you?" I replied, keeping my tone even, because I just received a text from Kyle. The color drained from her face. "What?" she gasped, panic flashing in her eyes. "He thinks you haven't moved on," I said, unable to mask the hurt in my voice. "What does that mean, Jessica?" Her expression morphed from shock to guilt. "I swear I haven't spoken to him since everything happened." "Then why is he reaching out?" My voice was rising, filled with frustration. "This isn't just a coincidence. He's still trying to insert himself into our lives, and you're telling me you're serious about moving on." "I don't know," she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought it was over. I thought I had made it clear. Please believe me." The sight of her crying shattered my heart, but I also felt the anger bubbling within me. "How can I believe anything you say? This doesn't look like someone who is ready to commit to fixing our marriage. It looks like someone who is still unsure." "I am ready. I do want you," she pleaded. "I just didn't know he would reach out again. I had no idea." In that moment, everything felt like a cascading failure. I sat down, burying my face in my hands, overwhelmed by the anxiety of it all. What am I supposed to do? "Jessica, how do I know you're not just going to keep finding excuses?" "I can't control what he does," she said, her voice trembling. "But I can control my actions. I'm committed to you. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that." Her words hung in the air, and while I wanted to believe them, the suspicion lingered like a shadow. I had a decision to make. Could I continue down this path, rebuilding trust with someone who had already betrayed me? Or would I need to take a step back and reevaluate my priorities? That night, I fell asleep wrestling with the familiar ache in my chest. The road ahead was uncertain, and I knew that whatever I chose would shape the rest of my life. The questions loomed large in my mind. Was it worth fighting for love, or was it time to let go? In the days that followed, I found myself deep in thought, weighing my options. The text from Kyle had shaken me more than I cared to admit. I kept replaying the situation in my mind, analyzing every moment, every interaction between Jessica and me. She was trying to be present, to take responsibility, but could I trust her again? The therapy sessions continued, but they felt like a band-aid on a gaping wound. Jessica would put forth efforts to discuss her feelings, and I would respond with my own, but the underlying current of doubt persisted. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still being pulled in two directions. The image of her with Kyle lingered in my mind, and it haunted me during the quiet moments when I allowed myself to think. I began to notice subtle changes in Jessica's behavior. She was more attentive, more willing to have difficult conversations, but there was still a wall between us. I wanted to believe she was committed to our marriage, but every time she reached out to me, it felt tentative, like she was still afraid of my reaction. It was as if she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. Then came the email that would change everything. I was in my office at work when I received a notification from my phone. It was from a trusted friend who worked in the local news outlet. The subject line read, "You might want to be aware." I opened it hesitantly, and as I read, my heart sank. The email contained a tip that Kyle was planning on leaking information about Jessica and me. It was a warning that he was looking to capitalize on my public position by dragging our personal issues into the spotlight. I felt a mix of anger and dread wash over me. This man was now trying to manipulate our lives for his gain. It felt like a low blow, and I knew I had to act. I immediately called Jessica and asked her to meet me at home. When she arrived, I could tell she was apprehensive. She walked in and found me pacing the living room, the email still fresh in my mind. "What's going on?" she asked, concern etched across her face. "I got a tip today," I said, my voice tight. "Kyle is planning to leak details about you and me. He's trying to create a narrative that could damage my reputation and, by extension, our marriage." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "What? Why would he do that?" "Because he's a petty man who thinks he can." Manipulate our lives to serve his agenda, I replied. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about protecting ourselves and our future. Jessica looked down, her fingers trembling as she processed what I had just said. I had no idea he would stoop so low, she said, her voice breaking. I swear I'm done with him. I've made my mistakes and I won't let him interfere anymore. Then we need to take action, I insisted. We can't let him control the narrative. I want you to reach out to him and make it clear that you're cutting ties. This needs to be a clean break. She nodded slowly, her determination returning. You're right, I'll message him. I don't want him in our lives anymore. I watched as she pulled out her phone and the tension in the room shifted. She typed furiously, her expression serious, and I could feel a sense of control returning. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. This was about creating boundaries and standing up against the man who had disrupted our lives. Okay, I sent it, she said, looking up at me with a mixture of anxiety and relief. I told him to stay away and that it's over. I don't want any more contact. I reached out and took her hand, feeling a spark of connection. Good, that's a step in the right direction, but we need to be on the same page about this, I said. We can't let him derail us again. Whatever happens next, we face it together. As the days passed, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I began to view our situation differently. Sure, the betrayal had hurt me deeply, but I could also see how much Jessica was trying to change and how committed she was to our marriage. It wasn't going to be a smooth road, but I could feel hope creeping back in. We continued attending therapy, and with each session, I noticed positive changes. Jessica was opening up about her reasons for cheating, her feelings of inadequacy, the loneliness she had experienced during my campaign. It was eye-opening to hear her vulnerability. I, too, had to confront my own shortcomings and how my work had taken precedence over our relationship. One evening, as we sat on the couch together after a particularly intense therapy session, I looked at her and said, I think I'm starting to see a way forward. Her eyes lit up with hope. Really? You mean it? Yeah, I replied, a smile forming on my lips. I think we can rebuild. It's not going to be easy, but if we're both committed to this, we can make it work. Jessica threw her arms around me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of warmth pierce through the coldness that had enveloped our relationship. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. I love you and I'm going to prove it. But just as I was beginning to feel optimistic, I received another notification on my phone. This time it was breaking news from the local media outlet. Congressman's wife in scandal, affair exposed. My heart dropped as I read the article detailing the situation with Jessica and Kyle. It was sensationalized and lacked nuance, focusing solely on the affair and painting me as the unsuspecting husband. I felt the walls closing in around me. How was I supposed to move forward? When the world outside was determined to drag us back into the past, Jessica stood beside me, reading the article over my shoulder. I could see the shock and horror on her face. Is this really happening? She whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, feeling paralyzed. It looks like Kyle followed through on his threat. The anger surged within me again, and I clenched my fists. I can't believe he would do this. He's taking advantage of our pain to further his own agenda. I need to talk to him, Jessica said, determination flashing in her eyes. I won't let him ruin us. I'll confront him in person and make it clear that this stops now. I stepped back, feeling a mix of admiration and concern. While I appreciate your courage, I don't want you to put yourself in that situation again. We can handle this through legal channels. But I could see the fire in her eyes. No, I need to face him. It's time I took a stand for us. I realized I had to support her decision. She was reclaiming her narrative, and I owed it to her to stand by her side. All right, I said, my voice steady. Let's come up with a plan together. We'll figure this out, but we need to move carefully. As we began to strategize, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were in this together, facing the storm head-on. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew we were fighting for something worth saving. The battle wasn't over and the road would be fraught with challenges, but together we could reclaim our lives and pave a new future. I was ready to fight for our marriage, and I hoped against hope that Jessica was too. The days following the revelation of the news article were tumultuous. Jessica and I found ourselves thrust into a whirlwind of emotions and decisions that we hadn't anticipated. The media was relentless, and it felt as though our lives were on display for public consumption. I knew that my reputation was at stake, but more importantly, our marriage was hanging by a thread. Jessica was unwavering in her determination to confront Kyle. I admired her resolve, but I also worried about the potential fallout. We spent long nights strategizing, discussing what she would say and how to ensure this wouldn't turn into a confrontation that spiraled out of control. We decided it was best to have a conversation in a public place, somewhere he couldn't easily manipulate the situation. On a Friday afternoon, we drove to a cafe known for its bustling atmosphere. As we sat at a table in the corner, I could feel the tension building between us. Jessica was nervous but determined, and it made me realize how much she had changed since the affair. She was taking charge of her narrative, and I felt a flicker of pride for her bravery. When Kyle arrived, I could see the smugness in his demeanor. He greeted us with a casual air as if this was just another meeting. "Hey there, lovebirds," he said, an insincere smile creeping across his face. "Cut the crap, Kyle," Jessica said firmly, her voice steady. "We need to talk." His expression shifted slightly, but he maintained his bravado. "Oh, is this about the article?" I thought it was just some harmless fun. Harmless fun? I interjected, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You've dragged our private lives into the spotlight, and it's not just fun. It's damaging, and it's unacceptable." Kyle leaned back in his chair, a smirk still plastered on his face. "Come on, you act like this is all my fault. Jessica made her choice, and now everybody knows." Jessica took a deep breath, regaining her composure. "I'm done with you, Kyle. I've made mistakes, but I refuse to let you control my narrative anymore. I want you to stay out of my life and let me move on. This ends here." His eyes narrowed, and for the first time I could see a flicker of uncertainty in his expression. "You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what you're getting into." "Actually, I do," she shot back, her voice unwavering. "I know exactly what I want, and it's not you. You may have thought you could manipulate our lives, but you've underestimated me. I'm taking back my life." The tension crackled in the air, and I felt a sense of empowerment radiating from Jessica. This wasn't just about her standing up to Kyle. It was about reclaiming her identity and our marriage. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. In support. Kyle sat silent for a moment, the smugness falling from his face. "Fine, just know that you'll regret this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Regret?" Jessica replied, her confidence shining through. "The only regret I have is ever getting involved with you. Stay away from me and from my marriage. This is your final warning." With that, Kyle stood up abruptly, leaving the cafe with a scowl etched on his face. As the door slammed behind him, I felt a rush of relief wash over me. Jessica exhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing as the weight of the confrontation began to lift. "I can't believe I did that," she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and exhilaration. "I'm proud of you," I replied honestly. "That took guts. You stood your ground." "Thank you for supporting me," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I needed to do that. I needed to reclaim my power." In the following days, we faced the media storm together. I decided to issue a statement clarifying the situation, emphasizing our commitment to moving forward together and focusing on our work in the community. It felt liberating to take control rather than let the chaos dictate our narrative. As the weeks turned into months, I started to see our relationship transform. We worked through the pain and anger that had once consumed us. With the help of therapy, we learned to communicate more openly and honestly. Jessica was making real changes in her life, and I could see the effort she was putting into rebuilding trust. I, too, had to confront my own shortcomings. I realized that I had often prioritized work over our marriage, and it was time to change that. I began to create boundaries around my work life, ensuring that I was present for Jessica and for us. Slowly but surely, we found ourselves reconnecting. We shared more laughter, more intimate moments, and even rediscovered the joy in each other's company. It was a long road, but we were committed to walking it together. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set, I turned to her and said, I never thought we would get to this point after everything that happened, but I believe we can build something even stronger. Me too, she replied, her eyes sparkling with hope. I've learned so much about myself and us. I won't take this for granted again. I took her hand, and in that moment I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The past was still there, but it no longer defined us. We were moving forward, forging a new path together. It wasn't perfect, and I knew that we would still face challenges ahead. But the experience had taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. I had learned that public service indeed transcended private betrayal. It was about serving each other and standing together in the face of adversity. Our story was far from over, but I was no longer afraid to embrace the future with Jessica. We were a team, committed to fighting for each other and our marriage. And for the first time in a long while, I truly believed we could emerge from the shadows of betrayal into the light of a renewed love.